In this video, which is part 2 of my Heiniger Handy clippers, we're going to look at reassembly. I'm Simon and welcome to Oakside Saddlery. The clippers have all been cleaned, the head's all cleaned, the filter's cleaned, which was probably causing the problem. We've done all the filters out there, the spring hangers. The casing itself of the motor was thick with grease and oil on the inside of there, so we've got all of that out. You can actually see now, when we first looked in there, that was black, and now we can actually see the silver of the motor shining there, the magnets. Head's all done. We've got all the hair out from underneath there. The bearings are good inside this, so we can sort that all out. Tensioner works fine. Our spring hangers and our blade carrier parts are all sorted there. They're all nice and clean. We cleaned the motor. The commuter rings up on that motor, so that's sorted as well. They're a bit cleaner than was previously. If we look at this filter, I think we should be able to see a difference now. I've just put grease all over that. If you look now, we can actually see through it, whereas previously we couldn't see anything. So that filter was probably blocked, and it's been most likely causing the majority of the overheating problems these clippers are having. So we'll get rid of them to the side for the time being. First thing we're going to look at then is assembling this clipper head together. I managed to get this blade carrier apart. I couldn't get it apart first time around, so I had to change screwdrivers and get a different one out. So we'll reassemble that this time. Now, if we think about how these fit together, these spring hangers are going to sit in there, and then the tensioner can push up and down on them. So if we're looking at that way, and that's going to sit that way, we need to put these into here. It doesn't matter what side they go in, they can go in either side. Little tiny screws then, all we need to do is line them up, try and figure out where the holes are, and we just tighten them up at the moment with my fingers. If you notice, my fingers are little thick fat things. I'm quite good at tightening stuff up without doing anything. Again, on this side here, we're going to look ourselves around, line it up. Once we've got it lined up, you can just tighten them up. I then use a little screwdriver head for this before I tighten them right up. So that's one on there, that's finger tight. This one on there, that's finger tight. That's our blade carrier then, and tensioner system is all in there, so it will sit like that. So before I get too far, let's just tighten that screws up. I'm going to use the electric on this one, so tighten up mode. This is quite fun because these quite often fly out of my hands when I try and tighten them up, so you're alright as long as it stays where I want it to stay. That's one done. And that's the second one done. Shouldn't need that one anymore now. So there's our spring hanger, our tensioners, and our blade carrier. So this is going to sit now in there. There's a block to go on there. We won't put that on just yet because it'll tend to fall out every time I move anything. So what we've got to get in here then, before we can put all of this together, is the two inserts. So they're the inserts that we removed out of there previously. So they just push back inside here. So we need to make sure they sit all the way in. And again, this one here, see where they don't line up because it's all been moving. We also need that little part that fell off, and that's going to sit just in there as well. What we really could do with here then is a little lubrication on it. So we're going to just put a little drop of oil just in there somewhere. So there's oil on that side, a little bit on that side. We'll give it a little rub around with fingers so I get covered in oil all the time. A bit on that side. So that's pretty good to go. We're going to line them up into there. Two screws then that held this together are these ones, so we're going to line one up there. That drops in there nicely. We're going to do the same on the other side, so again it goes in through there, so it goes through the insert and lines up with the hole that's on the inside of it somewhere. There it is, and we can tighten that one up there. Now these ones, when we tighten these up, they're going to actually tighten up right inside of this casing. So we just need to do, I'm just going to wipe some oil off my hands. So all we need to get then is we get a screwdriver in there and we give it a little tighten. You pick up a bit of the oil that we put on there, so that goes into the thread. That's quite nice for it. Doesn't have a lot of movement on these, it just makes them easier. So that one tight. And that's one tight. So tighten them up. So this hanger then, it can actually move if I hadn't jammed the blooming thing in there. up and down, so it comes up and down there. There we go. So as I'm going to pull that out, then we've got that block. So this is a drive block for it. Again, this could do with a little bit of oil on it. So yeah, we'll just squirt a little bit in there. It's going to sit into that nicely. It sits back inside on this block. To get these lined up, sometimes you have to make sure that that drive pin for it is at the top. Otherwise there's not enough room in it. When they're down the bottom, you can't get it out. So it's onto the top there. And that is going to then slide back down over that hanger. So we've got it. So we can see there when the motor's turning, see where it turns that from side to side. And then as we put our tension on, it pushes the blades down and holds them on tight there. So that's the clip head back together for the first part we're going to do. Get rid of that for the time being. So the best way of actually getting these back together is to fit one of these screws first. So we've got two separate screws. We've got a little small silver one that sits at the bottom there, and another one there which has got a special carrier to it that's going to hold that plate in. So the easiest way of getting this bottom screw in is to actually place it through the plastic first. And that way, when we've got it, we haven't got to try and get any fingers, which aren't very nimble, back through it. We're then going to feed all of this lot all through, trying not to actually get that screw knocked out. Once we've got it lined up, it should sit in place. There we go, that's sitting there nicely. We can see it's the right way around because that's the way the switch wants to go. We're just going to try and get that screw tightened up first of all. So if you can see there, that is really awkward to get to. Look, it's just inside there. I reckon they've got a special tool that does that. Probably a little right chip type screwdriver or something like that. Right angle one. So I'm just going to put a little bit of tension on it. That's that side done. To get this one then, we then use this little screw here. Just poke it through. Once it's there and lined up, just going to finger tighten it first. And that's that one sorted. So we have our back part of our motor then all fitted. The the switch is going to sit down underneath here, remember, and be clamped into place. And in the end of there, the two wires go in. So let's get them lined up in the right place. So that's the switch, it's in there. So we can see it works there. And then we've got the little condensers, sits just on the side of it here as well. So that sits just in there. And it has a little bracket, remember, and a little clamp. So this is the clamp. It's just a single screw, sits down in that little brass fitting down in deep in there. That part there fits inside the switch, and the other one just holds that in place. So we're just going to line it up with the screw first, which is there. Give that one a little tension when we can find her out. There it goes. And as it tightens up, we can push some of this into place to make sure it goes to where I want it to be. So I'm just going to tighten that down. So there we have the switch now held in place. So that's nice and rigid, a bit tighter, and that condenser is held into place. So that is, again, the wiring part from here. We've got the main wires to go in the back of that. We'll sort them out in a little while. Oh, man. Now let's get the wires connected. So the wires then, if we remember, were just sat in there. We had the brown to the one side there, blue to the other side. So one goes in there. And the other one goes in there as well. We make sure they're in as best as they can fit. We try not to have any sort of live contact sitting out of the wires there. It all should be enclosed. So I'm going to tighten this one down. I'm going to tighten this one down. So that's our wires into place. We want the cable protector bit to sit in there, and we want that wire to sit exactly as it was when we first took it out. So we've got our cable clamp, remember, that's going to just sit on top of it, into there. We can tighten that one down. Once it's in place, we'll just tighten that up properly. It's good that the sun's decided to come out and just shine halfway across my bench. I might move this in a minute and we'll have another little go. So that's all clamped up nice and tight. Cable's in there, wiring's all sorted, electrical part is done. I'm going to pause there for a minute and just move it so that's get that sun out of the way. Okay, I've just moved along a part. We have our cord to go in here, so this is just going to sit in there. It's clamped into place, and we have our cover there with the little protective sort of diverter, whatever you want to call it, in there. These sit in here. It just sits in there. It wedges up against that. It's at an angle. You can see it's got a bit of a slope to it. The idea of this is, when the air gets drawn through, it draws it into the motor itself, but also it stops you poking your fingers or screwdrivers through the back of this into what could be potentially live wire. So it must be in place. It's a safety feature, really. We're going to line it up then. Got the lug on the one end. It sits over the top here. Once it's in place, it all should just nice and gently clip into place. So there's our cord caught in it. We need our 4 little screws for these ones. So a lot of these screws are all very similar. These are our screws. These are the smallest ones. Smaller one, and the 4 bigger ones. These use the 4 smaller ones, so they're just going to sit inside there like that. And then all we've got to do is give them a little tighten. This one in. 2 in. 3 in. I'll put the 4th one in as well whilst I'm at it. Look at that, as he says, but then that one decides not to go in. There it goes. Tighten that one down. Tighten that one down. Tighten that one down. That's one there. Tighten that one off. We then have our filter. So again, look at that. So much nicer. Look, we can see the clippers and everything through there. That just sits on top of there. And all we need to do with this is just give it a little tighten. These don't have to be majorly tight. So that's that in place. Next thing, the motor itself. We're going to start assembling that. So if we remember, this just sits inside there, and right at the very bottom of it we have a little spring washer. So you notice it looks like it's all bent and twisted, but the idea is when it pushes against that bearing there, it actually holds it and stops any vibration. So before I get carried away, I'm going to put a little drop of oil on these. So there's one bearing there, as we can see. So we're just going to put a little drop on that. Only need a little tiny drop. Work its way in. Once it's in there, I'm going to wipe off that excess. We don't really want anything on it. There's another bearing at this end, so it's just inside there. It's not as easy to get to, this one, but it's just inside there. Can't wipe that one off when it's done because it's inside that hole. Pretty obvious, really, isn't it? This then, it's got to get all the way down there and sit in the bottom of that. I've tried it before with that cover off and just dropping it in, but then invariably I've turned it round and it's fell out. So all I've realised I've started to do now is if I actually fit it over the top of my screwdriver, I can poke my screwdriver down the hole to where I want it and let it go. And then when it's ready, it sits all the way down the bottom and sits into place. You probably can't see that because it's really dark down there. but it sits in the place down the bottom there. I'm just going to bring it to the light so I can see what I'm doing. That's gone in there nice. So this is now going to sit all the way back down there. If we look at that bearing, there, it'll only fit in one way. So it's going to sit that way round. Once we lined it up, that way round, you twat. That way round. Once it's lined up, it's all pushed into place. I'm allowed to say that word. Mute. So there's our motor now all assembled. We've got a nice bearing free there. That all turns well. We have a part of the head that's going to go on now. So this part here is the adapter, remember, for these. Clippers were sitting that way round, so that's going to sit on top of there. So if you look, it's got the same cutouts as to what this has, so it clamps it into place. So that's just going to sit in there. We've got these 4 screws again for these, which are the slightly bigger ones. So we have one that sits in here. Just give that one a little tighten. Not going to tighten it majorly up. Get that hair that's stuck in the screwdriver off. That one's going to go in there. We've got 2 more that sit inside there, remember. So one's there and one is there. Give these all a little tighten up. So our motor then is all assembled. Just got our clipper head to go onto there and our brushes to go in either side. Brushes, again, they're not too bad to put in, but because they've got a spring, they do tend to move about and ping where I don't want them to go. So these are our brushes. We had a bit of oil on there, didn't we? So I've cleaned that off, given them a bit of a wipe over. You can't do a lot with a carbon brush. So if we look at them again, you can see you've got a slight different shape there. It feeds inside, drops down, and then as we drop it down, what we've got to do is get one of these screw caps to go over the top and hold it in place. And this is where it starts to get fun, because we need to line it up on there and then push this down and try and keep everything in place whilst we're tightening it up. It's as simple as really. And they don't need to be tight at all, really. These, they just push in there and hold that brush in place. We're going to put the next one in. That one feeds in there. And again, we can do the same again. We can just get that cap, once it's there, line it up a bit. Once we're happy, we just tighten it up. And again, if you notice, I'm not putting any real pressure on these at all. They're only some sort of plasticky type affair, and they just break if you do anything to them. We have caps that go over the end. So the 2 caps that would come out, again, to protect these and stop them coming apart, they are a push fit. So they just go in there and push in. That's why they're so hard to get out. This one's the same. It goes, lines up in there and pushes in place. The clippers are then, the main part is all assembled. All we've got now is to put the clipper head on. So if you remember, on the clipper head, we had a couple of screws there that sat in that front, and they're that odd little screw that's quite awkward to get to. I'm going to try it this time. There is an Allen key head in there. They've been a bit mullered. I'm going to see if we can't get that on there to get that final tighten on them. This one then, if we remember, we had grease on there. So it depends on what brand they are, what make of clippers they are. Normally, if you have a nylon one and a metal part, you don't borrow too much with grease. But as they have grease on, I'm going to put grease back on them. Now all we use is just a really simple pot of multi-purpose grease. These are quite clever now. I like the design of these. You just squeeze it down a bit and you can get just a bit of grease you want, rather than having a whole pot full of it come flying out at you. So a little bit on my fingertip, I'm just going to work it round as I go. That spring's trying to pull it back into place there, so it will move when I'm doing it. And that's all it wants. It's just a little bit to lubricate it and make it a bit easier. As it moves around, it obviously frees itself up and gets more on it. So that's that one done. That pot away. Get rid of that grease off my fingers. Paper towels, one of the best things for these. Gets rid of hair, gets rid of the grease, gets rid of the lot. Clipper head there is going to sit just in there. It slots in and grips into place. All we've got to do is line up the two screws, which are there. One drops in this side. And I'm going to go and use my little screwdriver again, just to try and get them started. So once I know they're in there, I've got no hair in there now, look, to tidy it up with. That's that one done. And that's that one done. Oh, I did say about an Allen key, so I'm going to put an Allen key in here. Just try and see if we can't get it. This is still like a real tight fit because it's just not designed for this at all. I don't know if it's going to actually go in there, to be honest. Just as bad. Let's try a screwdriver again. So edge of it, tighten. Get this one here, edge of it and tighten. And there we have it. That's our clippers back together. We've got some blades that can go on. We'll sort them out another time. And the two screws for the blades go in there. They was in place, so I'll put them back in place. All we've got to do now then with these is run them up, test them, and give them a little pat test, see if they work. Other than that, they are finished. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. And if you need your clipper serviced or any of that sort of work, I can do repairs on dog and horse clippers, then you can contact me below, or you can message me via my website at www.oaksidesaddlery.co.uk. Thank you very much, and goodbye.